if we didn't need any more evidence that EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt is corrupt, if he's basically trying to, you know, impersonate Trump. You remember how Trump during the campaign would, like, you know, not allow certain journalists into his campaign events. His campaign tried to blacklist certain journalists. Seems like the EPA is doing the same thing. If you don't know, apparently they didn't let in several media outlets into an event about water contamination last week. And what do you know? One of the groups that he did not let in was staffers for Flint Congressman Dan Kildee. As you see the headline here, Flint Congressman staff reportedly barred from an EPA event on water contamination, along with other media outlets. So let me read this to you. The Environmental Protection Agency is having a rough week. On Tuesday, it was revealed that reporters from the Associated Press, CNN, and ENN News were barred from entering an EPA summit on toxic chemicals. When an AP reporter tried to enter the summit, she was reportedly forcibly removed. Though the EPA eventually relented and allowed press to cover the event, it was too late to stop an afternoon of negative coverage. Wednesday did not provide any better for the agency's image. In a tweet, Congressman Dan Kildee said the EPA barred his staff from attending a summit on water contamination. The congressman tweeted, "My staff was not allowed to attend today's EPA PFAS, which is porofluoractic acids summit, porofluoractic chemicals. And I represent communities affected by drinking water contamination. Scott Pruitt's lack of transparency and willingness to deny access to members of Congress and the media is deeply troubling. What's especially concerning about this move is that Kildee represents Flint, Michigan, the site of an ongoing toxic water crisis." I reached out to Kildee's office to get further comment on what had happened. Here is what his chief of staff told me. I tweeted it, so I'm just reading you my tweet. His chief of staff's name is Mitchell Rivard. Congressman Kildee was never invited to the EPA's PFAS summit, again, porofluoractic chemicals, which are cancer-causing chemicals that have been dumped in water bodies in North Carolina and the Ohio River Valley, and now it's popping up all over the country, actually. A lot of these types of chemicals are used in cookware manufacturing and other things. They cause cancers and all sorts of things. Congressman Kildee was never invited to the EPA's PFAS summit. After our office worked to attend, the EPA would only allow our office to attend select parts of the summit, and one of the congressman's staff was actually turned away at the door during Wednesday's session. This congressman is very troubled that Administrator Pruitt would attempt to limit access to a taxpayer-funded meeting. The public has a right to know what's happening inside their government. And that was from Dan Kildee's chief of staff. You know, obviously, I mean, Scott Pruitt is out of control. And President Trump doesn't mind that Scott Pruitt is corrupt and trying to cover up basically the hijacking of the Environmental Protection Agency to fossil fuel companies, to chemical companies. And they're trying to cover it up by not allowing media in certain events, by not even allowing the staff for the congressman of Flint. You would think you'd invite the representative who represents Flint, Michigan, right? Unless you're trying to basically cover up the fact that there's water problems all over the country. I mean, it literally makes no sense. None. Makes no sense. And just so you know, the piece that I'm talking about on Flint's water that I've been working on, Congressman Kildee is actually on the record in the piece. So that piece will come out next week. Again, we are looking for funding to get me back to Flint. To continue covering this crisis. Like I said, if you're coming to this late, the process, the water testing that has been done to say, oh, the water's fine in Flint, I have quite a deeply reported story that will show you not only is this science severely flawed, but it's endangering the lives of people in Flint, and it's emboldening a governor who presided over them while they were poisoned and has had no accountability. He is using this science and the results from this flawed science to declare water restored and shut down the water pods for poor people in Flint. Poor poisoned people, might I add. But there's no accountability because the Democratic Party keeps focusing on Russia. Yeah, sometimes they focus on Pruitt's corruption, But do you see mass outrage for the Democratic Party or anybody that should be going against Scott Pruitt? Where are the protests against Scott Pruitt and what he's doing at the EPA? Where are the protests ongoing in support of Flint, Michigan, who still has contaminated water? And yes, I understand there's contaminated water in other communities. I try to cover as many as I humanly can. You have Scott Pruitt basically not allowing media into certain events. Apparently the invite to Flint's representative just got lost in the mail. So this is very dangerous. This is dangerous times because what he's trying to do is basically morph the EPA, which is supposed to protect the environment. And by the way, there was corruption in the EPA before Trump. There was EPA doing bad things before Trump, under Obama and before Obama. So it's not like the EPA is just suddenly, corrupt under Scott Pruitt. It has gotten worse, but it's not like unique to Trump. So, and by the way, a lot of the things that are going to be revealed in my story that's coming out next week come before Trump. So, but this is very dangerous because basically Scott Pruitt is just auctioning off the EPA to fossil fuel companies, to chemical polluters, and he's trying to do it in the darkness of night. It's outrageous, totally outrageous. And who suffers? Not only the people in Flint, people in East Chicago, people in North Carolina, people in Massachusetts, people in Milwaukee, people in environmentally vulnerable communities. And by the way, contamination is now coming to communities that aren't even poor. There's some middle class areas and upper middle class that are starting to see problems with their water, whether it's lead, arsenic, cancer-causing chemicals made in the manufacturing of things like Teflon and other cookware. And by the way, I don't think CNN and these outlets that are being barred from covering these events are so great. It's not like they're doing significant investigative reporting, but they are the ones that have the resources and they should be invited into these events, but they're suddenly losing their invite to these events. Very scary thing. And by the way, some of you might not like this, but I've said it before and I'm going to say it right now. I just got to keep it real. Whether I think the audience is going to like it or not, got to admit it. I did underestimate Trump on the environment. On other things, I don't think there's a major difference between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. But on the environment, he's way worse. I think she's bad in her own right. She's pro-fracking and all these other things. I don't believe she would have auctioned off the EPA to the fossil fuel industry and big oil. Could be wrong, but that's what I believe. It's not a defense of Hillary Clinton. It's just what I believe and what I think the data shows. Scott Pruitt is the most dangerous, probably one of the most dangerous people in the world. He's like the John Bolton to foreign policy. He's the John Bolton to the environment. As a attorney general, I believe, for the state of Oklahoma, before he was made EPA administrator, he was basically having the oil and gas industry write emails for him. I mean, it was insane.